We're joined now by New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us this morning. I do want to begin with that tweet from the president yesterday. We saw most Republicans did not want to comment. What did you think when you saw it?
I mean, it was horrendous and horrific. The president targeted a 75-year-old man, justice-loving man who wanted to stand up for his neighbors and wanted to stand up for his fellow Black Americans and making sure that everyone is treated equally in the eyes of the law. And to target him when everyone saw on video exactly what happened is just such a reprehensible act. And it just goes to show how far we have to go in the fight for justice in this country.
Let's talk more about that right now. The White House is taking you on for supporting the defund the police movement. But it's not just President Trump. You know, Joe Biden doesn't support defunding the police either. This morning he writes in USA Today, the better answer is to give police departments the resources they need to implement meaningful reforms and to condition other federal dollars on completing those reforms. What's wrong with that argument?
Well, I think in a lot of different places in America, we experience very different realities with the police. Here in New York City, and I happen to represent the Bronx, I have Rikers Island here in my own district. And the New York City Police Department has a $6 billion a year budget. That is more than we spend on youth, housing, healthcare, and homelessness combined in New York City. And so the problem is not a lack of resources here. In fact, many folks here in our community say that the problem is the opposite, is that not enough resources are being put into the very kinds of social programming and investments that prevent crime and social discord in the first place. And so what a lot of folks are talking about when it comes into this movement is that they're asking for the same budget priorities that many affluent suburbs already have. Well, and it may sound strange, but many affluent suburbs have essentially already begun pursuing a defunding of the police in that they fund schools, they fund housing, and they fund healthcare more as their number one priorities.
But why is it necessary to take the money from the police? I mean, I understand your argument, the argument you're making about expanding social services, investing in social services, but the research does show that more police on the street means less crime.
Well, I think there's one question that is interesting here is that when it comes to funds, it's not always just about the number of officers in the street. It's about these police precincts that have tanks, that have military weaponry, and frankly have a degree of material resources and warlike weaponry that people ask, why does a local police precinct have this in the first place? So when we talk about defunding, it can show up in multiple ways. Additionally, the other way that we talk about, in this is that when people ask for healthcare, when they ask for housing, when they ask for education, people always say, how are you going to pay for it? And so what this movement is doing, first and foremost, it's important to note that this is directed at city councils and mayors. And so you should look to see if your city is having this conversation. But first, and the other question here too is, I think it's a valid question for people to ask, what should be our number one budget priority at all? Does any agency deserve to be funded more than almost all the others for healthcare, housing, and youth combined?
But what do you say? Excuse me, sorry. What do you say to your fellow Democrats who say the slogan defunding the police gets in the way of the argument you're making? You've even got the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Karen Bass, saying it's a distraction.
Yeah. Well, we can't necessarily, I don't think we can control what is happening right now in this moment, right? Our job as elected officials is to listen. And we can't control that everyone is going out in the street and saying Black Lives Matter. And just a few years ago, everyone said that Black Lives Matter polled poorly, that it was divisive, that it required too much explanation. But these are everyday people going out into their communities saying, this is what we want for ourselves and for our city council budgets. But, what I do think is incredible and the incredible work that House leadership has done is that they have listened and they've introduced a sweeping bill in the Justice and Policing Act. And what Congress is trying to do is create a national registry of officers that have engaged in gross misconduct to make sure that they can't run away from accountability by hurting someone in one precinct, leaving, and then getting hired at another one.
Congresswoman, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.